Oh my God.
Witness someone topple over.
Oh
Thank
my
you. So, most of the land there, some of it is for grazing, but a lot of it is for crops that are fed to animals. So, I got a graph here from the United Nations that shows the major problem we're having is with land use. There's not a whole lot of habitable land, and it's what we're doing with that land is the problem. This chart is hard to get a visualization of, so I created a little visual aid here. This helps us kind of grasp the concept. Circle is the Earth. Here's our Earth, okay? As I said, 70% of the Earth is ocean. We already talked about what's happening in the ocean. Estimated 2.2 to 3 trillion marine animals were harvested for food out of this each year. Leaves us about 30% of the Earth is land, but not all of the land on Earth is habitable. We got a lot of mountains and polar ice caps and beaches and deserts you can't live or grow crops. So that gives us this much land that is considered habitable land on the planet. And this is the problem, and this is the point I'm trying to get through to people. And I want you guys to grasp this. It's what we're doing with our habitable land that is causing the most problems. We use 50% of the habitable land for animal agriculture. This is to grow crops for animals and to raise animals. This does not include land we use to grow crops for ourselves. This is just for the animals. But we only get 17% of our global calories from this land, and around 30 to 40% of our global protein from this land. So it's very intensive, it's destroying the land in many ways, and it's not efficient, right? Why is it not efficient? I got a couple charts here to show you guys. So, this chart has a couple different graphs. I showed pictures of cows a minute ago. The graph on the right here shows how much farm animals are raised each year, and in the last 35 years, it's more than doubled. Meat is on the menu now more than it has ever been in history. Everyone knows about cows and beef and all of that. Yes, it's a problem, but if you look at the chart here, beef cows in the United States is around 80 to 90 million, whereas chickens are over 9 billion. They talk about the manure causing a permanent mark on the planet, but the water that goes into this, everyone knows how much water goes into a pound of beef, 1,800 gallons for a pound of beef, 500 gallons for a pound of chicken. But if you look at 500 gallons times 9 billion, that's a problem. Everyone thinks I just skipped beef, but chicken is a major problem, and the pollution from the manure is one of the biggest concerns. So farm animals produce twice as much manure as humans. High in nitrogen, super toxic. They're calling this the era of the chicken. As I said 1 second ago, the manure from chicken farms is leaving a permanent geological mark on the earth and changing the biosphere. These numbers are crazy. Okay, before you guys say this ranger sucks, I'm going home. I'm gonna hit you with some good news. I'm gonna offer you the solution now, okay? And you might know where I'm going with this, and it's not news. It's been out for a bit, but I'm gonna quote a couple studies. The biggest one came from the United Nations about 15 years ago. And the United Nations came together because they know countries squabble and they can't agree and there's infighting. The United Nations is a nonpartisan, non-political group of countries that come together literally for harmony is what's in their mission statement. And they looked at all of this and they said, we can make the biggest difference today with a diet change. And it wasn't just the United Nations, Oxford, Cambridge, Stockholm, NYU, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford. There's a big study that came out from Oxford a couple years ago and said avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce your impact on Earth. Stanford and Cal, local colleges, I like to mention them, top scientists there, they have a quote saying, our best and most immediate chance to reverse this trajectory is with a diet change. Why is that? Well, if you look at the numbers, the land required to feed people on a plant-based diet versus an animal-based diet, you can feed 14 times as many people on a plant-based diet as on an animal-based diet. It takes about 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of meat, depending on the animal. So very high intensive. And if we go back to this one more time here real quick. So we got the ocean, we got our land here. The chart showed this is how much habitable land we have. This is how much we're currently using for animal agriculture. If the world switched to a plant-based diet, the studies have shown we could reduce land use by 75% and feed the entire planet on this much land and reduce the pollution and all those problems. We're currently using this much land for animal agriculture. We grow enough crops to feed 10 billion people. We feed 50% of those crops to the animals. And starvation rates from the United Nations are about 9 million people per year die of starvation on this planet. We could end world hunger with the crops grown in the United States alone. So this system has many problems with it, not just environmental, right? Artificial intelligence has made some predictions, which I found interesting, right? It's just AI, who knows? But AI has predicted that by 2040, we're going to need a piece of land twice the size of India to feed the population under our current practices. Where are we going to come up with even more land? That means this is going to happen. So AI has predicted, because that's not reality, by 2040, animal products will no longer be available in supermarket shelves. Right? So, crazy to think about, but when you look at the numbers, anybody heard of Bloomberg Financial? This is numbers showing plant-based food market going from 30 to 60 billion in the last 4 years, with estimates of it hitting 160 billion by the end of the decade. And this kind of shows you guys something. We live in a supply and demand economy. And the reason why this is suggested as the best and most immediate solution is that it's a passive solution. And by that, what I mean is that we vote with our dollars. No matter what you want to see more of in a supply and demand economy, you vote for that with your dollars. You guys go to the grocery store 10 years ago, you maybe saw milk and soy milk. You go to the grocery store now, you see cashew, oat, soy milk, rice milk, all of these varieties, tons of different options, because people are asking for those things. They're voting with their dollars, right? We're gonna go shopping anyway. We can buy the high water footprint, high land footprint food, or buy this option that has less water, less land use, more eco-friendly. It's literally a passive decision, because instead of going here, you go here. You're going shopping anyway, you make different purchase options, and you vote with your dollars, right? So I always get a question, I gotta throw in a couple things here. What about almond milk? People always say, I switched to almond milk to try to make a difference, that I heard it was horrible. So I got a chart here that shows all the different milks. Yes, almond milk uses more water than the other plant milks, but compared to dairy, they're all better. Dairy uses tons of land, tons of water, and tons of emissions. So people also ask about regenerative farming. Regenerative farming is a thing where they're trying to preserve the soil. You guys probably know a lot about this. Permaculture, regenerative farming, grass-fed beef. The studies show, well, it depends on a couple things. Who paid for the science around regenerative farming? We know Big Ag is spending a lot of money to promote their ideas. It is a branding exercise. This article called The Myth of Regenerative Farming, called Regenerative Farming a Branding Exercise from the Big Pharma, not Big Pharma, but the Big Farm, Big Ag. A guy from Princeton said, it becomes an excuse for changing without really making much of a difference. And a guy at Yale says, all of the claims made by regenerative farming are very hard to back up. But the problem with regenerative farming is that it's not scalable. You can only feed 20% of the people, because it takes more land and often more time to get the same food produced. So, you guys heard the old joke about the ostrich sticking his head in the sand and pretending nothing's happening. So, I mentioned to you guys earlier about the history out here and the guys in the 1800s that came out here and cut down the trees and hunted the whales and the marine mammals. We think about legacy and what they did and how we can say, what were they thinking, right? But we have changed. Like, if you guys came down here today and you saw them clubbing the seals down there, if you saw them harpooning a whale, or if you went to visit Muir Woods and they were logging an old growth redwood tree, you'd call the cops, right? We have changed. We look back 100 years from now, we can say we've changed, we made a difference. We don't think the same way. So my question to you guys is, can we change now based on everything that's happening to the ecosystem? can we make a difference, or are we going to stick our head in the sand and pretend nothing is happening, right? Now, I'm not talking about different weather patterns. I'm not talking about shifting climate things. What I'm talking to you guys today about is things that haven't happened before, and they're not cyclical, right? And the question becomes, like, how long do we wait? What do you think? We have 4% of mammals that are wildlife. We have current rates of extinction that are 1,000 times greater. I get to give this talk a lot. People give me their thoughts and reasons, and my question is, like, how long should we wait? When do we do something different? Do we wait until current rates of extinction are 2,000 times greater? I mean, we're watching the destruction of the natural world while we sit back and pretend it's not happening. And what is our legacy going to be when in 10, 20, 50 years they look back and they say, they had documentaries on Netflix about this and they wanted to think it wasn't happening, right? We have to wake up. We have to make a difference. And have you guys ever heard of an idea called cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance means you hold a belief, and when someone presents you with a logical reason that goes against your belief, it makes you uncomfortable. I know this is not easy to listen to. I know this is hard to sit through this talk. I'm happy you guys have stuck it out with me. And I know this talk makes people uncomfortable, right? But I feel like this is important and this needs to be talked about, and we need to make a difference. And the thing about cognitive dissonance, what it does is it causes us to basically rationalize, ignore, and deny facts. You guys have been presented with information today that is easily found, easily verifiable. Most of my studies came from the United Nations or Oxford or Princeton or Harvard. Very easy to find this stuff, right? So if you guys feel motivated, there's a great quote from Gandhi called "Be the change." Every systemic change that has ever happened has started grassroots, from the ground up, right? When people take personal responsibility for their own actions. You look at any systemic change throughout history, people take personal responsibility for their actions. And I'd like to wrap up the talk with a great quote from Einstein. It ties in well. Einstein has a quote called, a phrase. He says, we're stuck in a prison of the mind, and he calls it an optical delusion. And this optical delusion allows us only to care for and love those we're closest to. Maybe our family, our friends, but everybody else, everything else is like not my problem. Einstein challenges us to free ourselves from this optical delusion of the mind and to find compassion for all living beings. And I feel like that is a great way to tie in this idea of making a change for our benefit, for the future of the human race, but also for nature and all of the species that are struggling right now. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out and listening to this. I know, like I said, there's a lot of information. I love discussion. I love debate. I love feedback. Any questions? You want to take a look at the slides? I'm happy to talk. So thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.